Hello class, how are you? I hope you all are good. Today we'll start with a new chapter, looping in Python. So we have learned about the different types of conditional statements or the control structures in Python like if else, if else, nested if. So working with those statements, now we have to work in loops. So Python provides different types of loops to handle the looping requirements. So let's plug in the chapter. Loops. Types of loops. Let's just start the chapter.
So far, we have learned about the conditional control structures if else, if else, nested if in Python. Now in this chapter, we will learn about loops. Python provides different types of loops to handle looping requirements. While all the ways provide similar basic functionality, they differ in their syntax and condition checking time. Loops. In programming, programmers do not particularly like repeating the same commands. So, programming languages have loop option in that case. Loop causes a section of our program to be repeated a certain number of times. The repetition continues while a condition is true. When the condition becomes false, the loop ends, and the control passes to the statement following the loop. In looping, a sequence of statements is executed until some condition for the termination of the loop is satisfied. A program loop therefore consists of two segments, one known as body of the loop and the other known as the control statement. The control statement tests certain conditions and then directs the repeated execution of the statements contained in the body of the loop. If we want to print the same text thrice, normally we will code it thrice. Now, suppose we have been asked to print this statement 100 times, what would be done? Writing the same code again and again would be more tedious and time-consuming. Here comes the loop as a savior. Types of loops. There are two types of loops in Python. Type 1. Counter loop, for loop and for else loop. Type 2. Conditional loop, while loop and while else loop. Counter loop for loop. The for loop is used to repeat a block of statements until there is no item in any sequence. This statement iterates over the items of any sequence, a list or a string, in the order that they appear in the sequence. Loop continues until we reach the last item in the sequence. The body of loop is separated from the rest of the code using indentation. Let us take a real-life example. Suppose we need to print 5 pages from the printer. In this case, printing task is same for all 5 pages. So, we set the condition in loop, print the pages till 5th paper is printed. As per condition, printer prints the page up to the 5th paper. When it reaches up to page 6, it will stop the printing. Syntax. For var in sequence, for. Keyword reserve word. Var. Hold the single value of sequence. In. Check the existence of items in sequence. Sequence. Collection of items. Loop indentation. Loop body. Execute for each item of sequence. Sequence, it is a collection of elements. String, list or tuple are termed as sequence. In operator, it is used to check existence of value in a sequence. If it finds the value in a sequence, it evaluates true, otherwise false. Program 1, print all the letters of cobot. Program code. Output in interactive mode. When the above program is executed, X variable holds the first letter of cobot and an operator will check the existence of letter in sequence string. If it exists, the loop body will be executed and the first letter C will be printed. Now, second time when X holds the second letter of cobot, in operator will again check the existence of letter in sequence string. If it exists, the loop body will be executed and the second letter O will be printed. This process will continue to print the letters of the word cobot till X reaches up to the last letter. Range is a predefined function of Python. This function is used when we need to perform an action for a specific number of times. It returns the sequence of numbers. The range function consists of three parameters: start, stop and steps. Start and steps are optional and are used for specific cases, but stop parameter is mandatory as it is used to define the final point of the sequence. Example: normal coding style takes more time and space to type the repetitive code and it has more chance of error in writing the program. Using the loop, we can see that the lines of code reduce. Due to the short code, it takes less time to type the code, which saves overall time and also makes the program error-free. Program 2. Print all the numbers between 1 to 10. Program code. Output in interactive mode. In the above program, range function has two parameters: start is equal to 1 and stop is equal to 11. So, here every time step value by default would be incremented by 1 and values from 1 to 10 will get printed. Counter loop for else loop. When we use else with for loop, this structure is known as for else loop. The else clause of a loop gets executed only if the loop completes its execution normally without having encountered with break statement. Syntax. Loop body. Else body. Program 3. Print the message, print done, after printer prints 5 pages. Program code. Output in interactive mode. When the above program executes, the loop statement will execute 5 times. Once the range goes to 6, it will print the else statement. Conditional loop while loop. The while loop in Python is used to repeat a block of statements for given number of times until the given condition is false. It starts with the condition. If the condition is true, then statements inside the while loop will be executed. Otherwise, if the given condition is false, then it will not be executed for at least once. It means, while loop may execute 0 or more time. Suppose we need to print the pages from printer until the printer tray gets empty. In this case, we do not know the exact number of papers in tray, but we know a condition, till the tray gets empty. So, the printer checks the availability of pages each time it begins to print and stops at unavailability. While loop is also known as entry control loop. Syntax. While condition, while. Keyword reserve word. Condition. Any expression that evaluates true and false. Loop indentation. Loop body. Execute when condition is true. Program 4. Print the pages until the user enters stop. Program code. Output in interactive mode. In this program, uns variable is initialized to start, so loop condition is true and it will enter the loop and execute the statement. This process executes the loop statements until user types the word stop. Once the user types it, the loop gets terminated. Program 5. Print the sum of series from 1 to 5. Program code. Output in interactive mode. In this program, the variables num and sum are initialized to 1 and 0. The loop condition evaluates to true as num is equal to 5 and it will enter to the loop and store the value 1 in some variable. Next, the value of num will be incremented by 1 and now set to 2. The program's control moves to while loop and again the value of num is checked against condition, i.e., num5, as it is still satisfying the condition. So, it will lead to the execution of statements inside the loop body and the process would be repeated until the condition evaluates to false, such as when the value of num exceeds 5. Conditional loop while-else loop. When we use else with while loop, this structure known as while-else loop. Using this loop, we can run an instruction code when the comparing value reaches to exceed limit of condition value. Syntax. For var in sequence, loop body. Else body. Program 6. Print the value of variable until it becomes less than 0. Program code. Output in interactive mode. In this program, value variable is initialized to 5, so loop condition is true and it will enter the loop and print number 5. Next, the value will be decremented by 1. Again condition will be tested and evaluates to true, so it will enter to the loop and print number 4. This process executes the loop statement until value becomes less than 0. Once value becomes less than 0, the loop gets terminated and else statement gets executed. Break statement. Break statement can be used to unconditionally jump out of the loop. It terminates the execution of the loop. We can use it in while loop and for loop. Break is mostly required when due to some external condition, we need to exit from a loop. Program 7. Exit the loop when num is equal to 4. Program code. Output in interactive mode. In the execution of this program, the loop terminates when the value of num becomes 4. Continue statement. Continue statement is used to tell the program to skip the rest of the statements of the current iteration of loop block and move to next iteration of the loop. Loop does not terminate but continues on with the next iteration. This can also be used with both while and for loop. Program 8. Print all the values from 1 to 6 except the value 3. Program code. Output in interactive mode. Throwback. In looping, a sequence of statements is executed until some condition for the termination of the loop is satisfied. A program loop therefore consists of two segments, one known as body of the loop and the other known as the control statement. There are two types of loops in Python, counter loop and conditional loop. The range function consists of three parameters, start, stop and steps. When we use else with for loop, this structure is known as for else loop. While loop is also known as entry control loop. When we use else with while loop, this structure known as while else loop. Using this loop, we can run an instruction code when the comparing value reaches to exceed limit of condition value. Break statement can be used to unconditionally jump out of the loop which terminates the execution of the loop. Continue statement is used to tell the program to skip the rest of the statements of the current iteration of loop block and move to next iteration of the loop.